Wheel in the Sky comes on the radio. That's when I realized, hey, this is moving along.
An all-new episode of The Jeremy White Show.
Available wherever you stream.
Well, welcome to The Jeremy White Show. Make sure you like and subscribe to get more cool stuff like this. I caught up with the legendary bass player for Journey, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee Ross Valory. He's got a brand new solo record available now wherever you get your music called All of the Above. Did a really great cover of War's Lowrider too, so if you want to go check out the music video, it's on his YouTube channel. Fantastic stuff. But I caught up with Ross, and of course we talked about the latest solo record, but I had to sneak in some Journey questions, as you know. And I didn't want this interview to be like a TMZ sort of gossip type, hit piece, us against Neil or anything like that. The opposite of this, because, we're big fans of Neil, big fans of the band. But I had to ask him a couple of questions, and, here are some of those. Make sure you like and subscribe, and you can check out the full interview with Ross Valory available now. Wherever you stream podcasts, just search up The Jeremy White Show. Talking about that, obviously I want to talk about this new record and stuff, but, just go back to the Journey thing. It's like, at one point, did you feel like the band was it a conscious decision to go from that experimental sort of jammy type of thing to being a little bit more commercial and try to be more mainstream? Was that pressure from the label? Was that Neil and Steve? Was it Jonathan coming in? Like, where did you see the band changing?
Jonathan was a result of a change in approach, and it definitely came from the record label. The first three albums sold gold. We had gold albums, and in those days, gold meant 500,000 units sold. So each of those albums sold 500,000 units. That's not too bad. This idea of gold changed. Sooner or later, gold became $500,000 worth of units, which is actually a much smaller increment. But the band was doing well with those albums, but the label wanted to do more. And so we made that conscious decision to develop more vocally oriented music. Hence the arrival of Robert Fleischman briefly, and then followed by Steve Perry, and then by Jonathan Cain as a very qualified writer. So that's how it happened. The label wanted to do something different, and we were flexible enough to do it. And lo and behold.
Yeah. Well, that's it. A lot of bands would sort of push back and say, no, we don't want to be there. No, we want to have our own identity. But you guys, no, we'll be the clay, mold us. We'll do what you want us to do.
Yeah, well, we molded the clay.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Anybody lost their identity in it, that's for sure. Just the switching from experimental fusion music to popular music was a good example of how flexible and talented everyone was with the band, and as some still are, being flexible, being versatile, and hey, no complaints here.
Well, that's it. All of a sudden you got somebody come into the band and you got a riff like a piano part on Don't Stop Believin'. As soon as you hear that, did you think that was going to be what it is today?
Yes, but I think probably the beginning of the wave for me was when I was driving around in the San Francisco Bay Area and listening to the FM radio. And this is about 1978. Wheel in the Sky comes on the radio. That's when I realized, hey, this is moving along. Not that none of us felt that way intuitively. I think everyone had the idea this is already successful. It's a matter of time and continuing to create and write and record and perform. Yeah, so there's this shift to popular music, and there's all of this approach to instrumental fusion music, which continued at least rolling around my head and in my spare time. But I pretty much put most of that aside for the career. And about 12 years ago, I figured, why wait? Why not just begin in my spare time finish what I started.
It's about, do you have any of your old gear from back in the day, like the old PVs and stuff, or have you held on to that stuff?
I do actually have. I've never been a big collector. Most people that have been around as long as I have would be collecting lots of guitars. In fact, some people have made good investments in buying lots of instruments they couldn't possibly play all of. But
right.
I do a modest collection of basses, and I do have some from the old days, and I am actually kind of eclectic is the word when I'm building sound systems for the bass. I use old and new gear. In fact, it reflects in the way we record in the studio here. We use inboard, all of the modern technology in terms of plugins and modern gear, but there's also gear that comes from the analog days that's also very useful. To answer your question, yes, I mix and match old and new, sort of a Millennium Falcon approach.
Which is cool, though, because, I mean, like, that's what I loved about Journey. It's like you guys were never afraid of technology. I mean, like, even Neil had him on the show, and we were talking about fractals versus, his high watts. And
yeah, Neil is deep into experimenting and actually utilizing a vast array of equipment. He really is. And Jonathan is a consummate engineer in his own right.
Was there a lot of experimentation in the studio in the sense with gear, trying to find that sound? Because I said to Neil, I'm like, just about his guitar tone. You listen on like Escape or those records, man, nobody had sounds like that. I mean, like the records really sounded unique. The bass sounded like you guys, the guitars, the keyboards. It had a unique, original sound.
Mm-hmm. It would be difficult for me in depth to describe or to tell you how Neil got his sound, but in those days there was less technology, and it was more about how a person played. I think possibly from Neil's end, it's how he set up his guitars more than anything. From my end, some of the better known tones for me is a use of a harmonizer for songs like "Don't Stop Believin'" or "Send Her My Love." It's just one simple outboard device to get that sound.
So you weren't like really much of a gearhead in the sense, where you more of just a plug it in and.
No, actually, late in life, I've become a gearhead now.
Nice.
Full approach to performing, and in some cases, recording was one instrument, a tuner, and possibly a chorus pedal or a harmonizer, and everything would be performed by changing the position of my picking fingers on the neck and by selecting pickups and tonality to change from song to song or section to section. Yeah. More inclined to have a different instrument for different songs. And I'm currently using the Helix pedal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, verb and delay and all kinds of effects, which I've never experimented with before. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot to keep up with. It requires a lot. And there's so many musicians like Jonathan and Neil who have been delving and experimenting with the variety of technological advances over the years. So I'm just getting started.
Yeah. When the guys started to bring in tracks in the live performance, were you for that or against that?
Once again,
when the guys, because I asked Neil about this, even like Dean, I was like, when you guys started bringing tracks into the fold, because a lot of the stuff is like there's backing vocals that are on tape for the live show and stuff. Like, were you for that or against that when that technology started to come into the live performance?
Well, the way it happened is everyone was singing. Mm-hmm. It's not like a Milli Vanilli.
No, it's just there to complement it.
Yeah, in fact, in some cases, some of the songs required extra keyboard parts or a rhythm guitar that could not be played by Jonathan because he was playing his keyboard part. So, I think it's a good middle ground.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, because it's like you see people online like trashing bands, like, oh, they're playing the tracks, they're miming this and that. But I always say, with the price of concert tickets these days, people are expecting the perfect show. And if it doesn't sound good, they're going to be leaving there moaning, it didn't sound good. But then you have a small vocal minority that say, oh, well, they're playing the tracks, it's not live. But I'm all about the show. I mean, it's all about the show at the end of the day, right?
Been the case with Journey. Whatever was added was to bolster, not to replace, but to bolster. In fact, there's just so many bands that are actually doing what the critics describe, but not Journey.
It's there to complement it, make it sound a little bit more fuller, especially when you're in stadiums. You want a consistent sound.
Right, to bolster it. Well said.
Yeah. One last question just before we wrap up. I mean, when Arnel came into the band, how did you feel about Arnel coming in, and did you think he was the right fit for the band?
Absolutely. And it was a Cinderella story for him, coming not necessarily from obscurity, but from a different world, a different part of the world, and in a sort of a closed circuit that he had in Asia. He was and is the right guy for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was the best replacement. I mean, I think he still is.
Yeah, and at first there was some, pushback from fans. How can you, how can you do this? Well, we can, we did, and he proves to be the right fit to this very day.
Yeah. And look, I mean, he seems to be the only one that's never involved in any drama. I mean, all that stuff with Jonathan and Neil not too long ago, that was getting kind of crazy at one point. And I mean, the band's been I like that. The word is mum, right? Well, I mean, look, even you had your fair share of drama with the guys. I mean, like,
I don't know about any of that,
Yeah. But I mean, look, even you had your issues with Neil. I mean, like, how come you guys just couldn't work it out in the end at this point?
Well, just like with any family or any business or any partnership, there's always differences. But what's important to say is not about what went wrong, but what went right for everybody, and continues to go right for this band as it thrives. We had some differences. We came to a good agreement, and we just moved on with our lives. But what went right was for everybody to enjoy, and to have enjoyed for decades, a very creative, vital, powerful band.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think
I'm blessed to have been a part of it.
Yeah. Do you think at some point you'll ever get back on stage with those guys, or is that just done?
I have no idea. Somebody asked me that in an interview a while ago, and I said, as I'll probably say again, knowing how unpredictable the universe is, I can't never say never. I don't have any plans to do so. I'm not sure if the boys do either, but we're kind of busy living our own lives right now.
Yeah. I mean, would you even want to go out on the road at this point? You just got off this beautiful vacation with your wife. Do you want to leave home and be grueling road schedule again? Is it a lifestyle thing?
That's hard to say. Touring extensively as I did with the band for decades, you can't knock it. It was made as comfortable as could be, but it's time away from other people. It's time away from family and friends, and sometimes friendships and relationships diminish if not they disappear. So there's a great amount of sacrifice that everyone who is involved with touring gives up.
Yeah.
Nothing's for free.
No, well, that's it. I mean, you've got a whole life when you're not there, and it's like that life sort of gets neglected. A lot of artists say it constantly,
I'm sort of reintroducing myself to all my nieces and nephews and great nieces and great nephews. It's like, hi.
Yeah.
Now, what are you?
Well, that's right. It's almost like
literally, it's like, whoa, I'm just getting familiar with my greater family, and there's a lot of them. And, friends, too, developing new friendships. So there's a definite advantage at this point in my life for not being on tour.
Yeah. And look, you put your time in. It's time to enjoy the rest of it at this point.
All of the above.
Yeah. Well, look, brand new record available now. All of the above. Ross Valory. Go pick it up wherever you get your music. RossValory.com. And of course, the music video is available on YouTube. This was absolutely fantastic. We'll have to do this again and get a little bit more in depth about the gear next time.
We shall.
Yeah.
I'll take you on a tour. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
An all-new episode of The Jeremy White Show.
Available wherever you stream.